I've been through tough moments in my life, but nothing prepared me for the night my phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. It was one of those quiet nights where the whole world feels still. I was half asleep on the couch, TV on low, just waiting for Lauren to text me goodnight from her girls' trip. Instead, I got a voicemail from her. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Lauren wasn't the type to leave voicemails, but I figured maybe her service was bad or she pocket dialed me. I picked up my phone, hit play, and leaned back, completely unaware that the next 30 seconds were about to destroy the picture-perfect world I thought we had. The voicemail started with noise. Music. People talking. Laughter. Not the kind of laughter you hear during a quiet girls' weekend in the mountains. This was loud, messy, like a party she never mentioned. I frowned, thinking maybe I misheard something. But then I heard her voice. Clear. Happy. Too happy. She giggled at something, and right after, I heard a man's voice, deep, close, and definitely not friendly in a casual way. He said, "I still can't believe you told him you're on a girls' trip. You're wild." My heart dropped. And then Lauren whispered back. Soft. Playful. A tone I hadn't heard in months. Shoo. He thinks I'm asleep. I froze. Not just physically, my whole mind stopped. Everything inside me just crashed. I replayed the voicemail. Once. Twice. 5 times. 10. Each time, the sounds got sharper. Her laugh cut deeper. The man's voice felt louder. And that whispered line, "He thinks I'm asleep," echoed in my head like someone hitting the same bruise over and over. I kept waiting for some kind of explanation. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it wasn't what it sounded like. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But no matter how many times I listened, the truth stayed the same. She wasn't with her girlfriends. She wasn't asleep. She wasn't where she said she was. And she wasn't alone. I remember sitting there, staring at the wall, my phone still glowing in my hand. The room felt colder. My chest felt tight. And all I could think was, how long has this been going on? How many times had she smiled at me while hiding something like this? I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even move for a while. I just kept hearing that voicemail on repeat inside my head, over and over, turning disbelief into dread, and dread into something heavier. Something that would follow me long after that night was over. When that voicemail ended, something inside me felt familiar. Not because I'd heard anything like it before, but because deep down, I knew the signs had been there long before that night. I just refused to see them. Looking back, the weekend trip had never felt right. Lauren started acting strange about 3 days before she left. She said it was a girls' getaway, something they supposedly planned last minute. But when she told me, she couldn't hold eye contact. She kept fidgeting with her sleeves, touching her hair, talking too fast, little things I noticed but tried to brush off. She packed light. Too light. Lauren was the kind of person who packed half our closet for a simple 2-day beach trip, but for this weekend? One small bag. Just one. I remember asking, "You sure that's all you need?" She smiled, but it wasn't her real smile. It was the type of smile someone gives when they've already rehearsed the lie. "Yeah," she said, "it's just a simple trip. Nothing fancy." I should have felt something then. A tug in my chest. A warning. But I ignored it, convincing myself it was stress, not a problem. And then there were the last-minute changes. First, they were heading to a cabin. Hours later, it was suddenly a lake house. Then it became a friend of a friend's place that none of her usual friends ever mentioned. Every time she explained it, her story sounded a little more polished, a little too smooth. When she finally left, she only gave me a quick kiss. Barely 3 seconds. Not the warm, "I'll miss you" kind, more like someone rushing through a door before the truth catches up to them. During the first night of her trip, her messages already felt distant. Short replies. Cold responses. The usual heart emojis were gone. By the second night, her texts slowed down completely. By the third, they stopped. I told myself she was tired. Busy. Having fun with her friends. But my intuition, the one I kept trying to silence, was getting louder. Something felt off. Something felt wrong. That Saturday afternoon, I called her. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Her friend's social media. Absolutely silent. Not a single post, not a single tagged photo, nothing. But even then, I didn't let myself believe anything serious was happening. I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt. Until that voicemail arrived. Hearing that man's voice, her laugh, her whispered line, it was like every ignored sign suddenly formed a clear picture. A picture I never wanted to see. All the little details, the nervous packing, the sudden plan changes, the distant messages, it all made sense now. My instincts hadn't been lying. I just didn't want the truth. And now, the truth was impossible to ignore. The moment that voicemail ended, I felt something shift inside me. Shock turned into silence, and then silence slowly turned into questions. Too many questions. I needed answers. Not later. Not tomorrow. Right now. The first place I checked was her social media. It had always been active, pictures, stories, little updates about her day. But suddenly, nothing. No new posts. No updates. Not even a single story from this so-called girls' trip. Her page looked frozen in time, like she stopped using her phone the moment she left home. That alone felt strange, but what bothered me more was that her friends weren't posting either. Not one of them. So I messaged a couple of them. "Hey, how's the trip going?" The first reply came back 10 minutes later. "Good. She's having fun." Short. Neutral. Almost, too clean. The second friend took even longer to answer. When she finally wrote back, it felt rehearsed. "Oh yeah, she's around somewhere. Bad service here lol." That didn't sit right with me. Lauren never went off-grid. She loved sharing everything, from her morning coffee to a random sunset. Now suddenly she's unreachable. I felt my chest tighten again. I opened our shared phone plan app. Normally I wouldn't bother, but betrayal makes people notice things they never checked before. Her location history was turned off. She had never turned it off once in our entire relationship. Why now? As I stared at the blank screen, my phone buzzed, an old bank notification from earlier that day. At first, I almost dismissed it, until I saw the name of the place. A restaurant I'd never heard of. In a city she wasn't supposed to be in. I searched it. Upscale. Romantic. Dim lighting. Two-person tables. A place you don't go to with friends. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further. Another charge. A hotel. Not just any hotel, a luxury one. Hours away from the lake house she told me about. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my breath caught somewhere in my throat. I could practically feel the truth tightening around me, inch by inch. A romantic restaurant. A hotel in another city. No social media posts. Evasive friends. A voicemail with another man's voice. Piece by piece, everything started forming one clear picture, and no matter how hard I wanted to deny it, it all pointed in the same direction. I remember placing my phone down on the table, my hands shaking. Not from anger. Not yet. It was heartbreak. The kind that makes your mind beg for another explanation, even when the truth is already sitting in front of you. I asked myself, how long? How long had she been lying? How long had she been planning this? How long had I ignored the signs? My world was shifting, breaking apart in slow motion, and I knew the next step would hurt even more. But I wasn't turning away. Not anymore. I must have replayed that voicemail 100 times. Every time I listened, something new stood out, a sound, a tone, a voice I didn't fully catch the first time. But on the 10th or maybe the 20th replay, I heard it. A laugh. Not Lauren's. A man's laugh, low, confident, almost proud. It sat in the background for barely a second, but it was enough to make something in my memory spark. I closed my eyes, replaying the voicemail again. And that's when the voice followed. The same deep voice I heard earlier saying, "I still can't believe you told him you're on a girl's trip." The more I listened, the more familiar it felt. Where had I heard that voice? I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, focusing as if my entire world depended on it. And honestly, in that moment, it did. Then it clicked. Ryan Collins. A name I hadn't thought of in months. A guy Lauren had mentioned only in passing. A coworker at her office. I remember the first time she brought him up, it was casual, almost too casual. "He's new," she'd said. "Kinda loud. Talks a lot." Back then, I didn't think twice. We all meet people at work. We all have coworkers we talk about here and there. But as the memory sharpened, little moments started coming back. Moments I ignored. Like the night we were having dinner, and I mentioned something funny on Lauren's workgroup chat. She laughed at first, then I said, "Wasn't that Ryan guy the one who started the thread?" Instantly, her mood shifted. She pushed her food around, changed the topic, asked about something unrelated. I didn't think it meant anything at the time. Or the morning she left early for work, earlier than usual. When I teased her about trying to impress her boss, she blushed, but it wasn't the cute, playful blush I knew. It was a nervous blush. A "don't ask more questions" kind of blush. There were other signs too. Like her sudden interest in staying late at the office. The extra makeup on days she claimed were meeting days. How she'd smile at her phone, then lock the screen the moment I walked into the room. Back then, I convinced myself it was work stress. People grow, change, get busier. But now, hearing Ryan's voice on that voicemail, knowing she wasn't on a girl's trip, everything lined up in one painful, undeniable truth. This didn't start last weekend. This wasn't a sudden mistake. This wasn't a one-time thing. It had been building for months. Maybe longer. A pattern. A secret life running parallel to the one she shared with me. My hands tightened into fists, not out of anger, but out of realization. The kind that shakes you to your core. I wasn't losing my marriage because of one voicemail. I had already lost it long before that night. And now, I finally knew the name of the man who helped break it. When I finally admitted to myself that the voice in the voicemail belonged to Ryan, something inside me didn't explode. It sank. Deep. Almost like my heart dropped into a place I'd never felt before. Anger came first, sharp, fast, and blinding. Then sadness followed, slower, heavier, spreading through me like a cold wave. And after that came something worse than both. Betrayal. It sat in my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to think about anything except how everything I believed in had just cracked open. So I shut myself in my room. Turned off my phone. Closed the blinds. Let the silence take over. I stayed like that for almost an entire day. Not crying. Not yelling. Just, sitting with the storm inside me. Trying to understand how someone I trusted with everything could treat our life together like it meant nothing. At some point, I heard knocking. Soft at first. Then louder. Ethan. It's Jacob. Open up, man. Jacob had been my closest friend since college. He could sense when something was wrong even through a text, so my silence didn't go unnoticed. I didn't want to see anyone, but something in his voice broke through the wall I'd built around myself. When I opened the door, he took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. He just walked in, sat down on the couch, and waited. He knew I'd talk when I was ready. After a long moment, I finally whispered, "She wasn't on a girl's trip." Jacob didn't react. He kept his eyes on me, steady and patient. So I pulled out my phone. Found the voicemail. Pressed play. The room felt like it froze. Both of us sat there in complete silence while the sounds of laughter, music, and that man's voice filled the air. When it ended, I saw Jacob's jaw tighten. Not in aggression, but in disbelief. In protective anger. He exhaled slowly. "Ethan. I'm so sorry." And that was it. Those words, they were the ones that finally broke me. Not the voicemail. Not the lies. Not the betrayal. Just hearing someone say out loud what I'd been trying to ignore hit me harder than anything. I dropped my head into my hands, and for the first time since this started, I actually cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, painful tears I didn't even know were waiting. Jacob sat beside me the whole time. He didn't push me. He didn't tell me to calm down. He didn't tell me what I should do. He just stayed. And in that moment, he became the anchor I desperately needed, the person keeping me grounded so I wouldn't spiral into some impulsive decision I'd regret later. He reminded me, not with words, but by simply being there, that I wasn't alone. And that even in the middle of betrayal, someone still cared enough to stand with me. After the breakdown, after the tears finally slowed, something unexpected happened inside me. Clarity. Not peace, not acceptance, but a calm, steady clarity that felt sharper than any anger I'd ever felt. For the first time since hearing that voicemail, I wasn't drowning in emotions. I was thinking. And I knew one thing for sure, if I confronted Lauren right away, she'd deny everything. She'd twist the story, blame bad cell service, claim it was a misunderstanding, cry, apologize, and somehow turn it around on me. I'd seen her do it before. Not on this scale, but with smaller things, little lies she smoothed over with practiced innocence. So this time, I wasn't giving her the chance. I needed facts. Details. Proof she couldn't spin into another story. Jacob sat across from me, arms crossed, watching me hold my phone like it was evidence from a crime scene. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. I nodded. I have to be. The first thing I did was save the voicemail. Not just once, multiple times. I backed it up to my computer. Emailed it to myself. Saved it on a flash drive. I wasn't losing that recording, no matter what happened next. Then I took screenshots. Her sudden location history blackout. The messages from her friends, short, vague replies that didn't match anything real. Her restaurant charge. The hotel charge hours away from where she claimed to be. Every detail was another piece of the truth I knew I'd need later. Jacob watched me organize everything into a folder on my desktop labeled only L. He didn't joke. He didn't comment. He just nodded with this look that said, "You're doing the right thing." Next, I went through her old messages. Anything that hinted at late nights, early mornings, sudden errands, unexplained schedule changes. It was painful. Like reliving months of lies in fast forward. But with every screenshot, every timestamp, I felt the fog in my mind lifting. This wasn't about revenge, not at first. This was about staying grounded. Making sure I didn't act out of pure emotion. Making sure when the truth finally came out, it wasn't just a fight. It was undeniable. It was real. It was her own action speaking louder than anything I could ever say. Jacob placed a hand on my shoulder. "When she comes home," he said quietly, "don't raise your voice. Don't argue. Just show her what you know." I nodded. "That's the plan." He leaned back. "And Ethan, don't let her drag you into excuses. When someone lies this much, the truth hits harder than anger ever will." He was right. The truth, her own truth, would do more damage than shouting, slamming doors, or dramatic confrontations ever could. I didn't know how she would react. I didn't know if she'd confess, deny, break down, or walk out. But I did know one thing: when she came home, her lies would finally collapse. And I would be ready. Sunday night arrived slower than any day I can remember. Every hour felt stretched, pulled tight like a rubber band ready to snap. By the time the clock hit 8:42 p.m., I heard the sound of her keys at the door. I stood in the kitchen, trying to keep my breathing steady. The door opened, and Lauren stepped inside, dragging her suitcase behind her. The moment she saw me, her whole face lit up, too bright, too excited, like she was acting for an audience. "Hey, babe," she said, bouncing in with this strange, exaggerated energy. "You would not believe the weekend we had." I didn't say a word. Just watched. She talked fast. Too fast. How the cabin was so peaceful, how the girls barely had cell phone signal, how they took so many pictures she needed time to sort them, how the weather was perfect for hiking. Every detail was polished, practiced, smooth as glass. And every part of it was a lie. She didn't stumble once. Not even a pause. It was like she'd rehearsed the whole story in the mirror before coming home. I just nodded. "Yeah. Sounds fun." My voice was flat, but she didn't notice. Or maybe, she didn't care to notice. She kept going, filling the room with stories that never happened, places she never visited, moments she never lived. All while standing in front of the man she believed would never question her. When she finally ran out of fake details, she smiled softly and leaned against the counter like nothing was wrong. "Well," she said, "I'm exhausted. I might just shower and get to bed early." I nodded again. She mistook my calm for acceptance. She really believed the lies had worked. And just when she turned to leave the room, I spoke. "Lauren?" She paused. "Yeah." I reached into my pocket. Pulled out my phone. Placed it gently on the table between us. Then I pressed play. The voicemail filled the kitchen, laughter, music, clinking glasses. Then her voice, whispering she told him it was a girl's trip. Then the man's voice, Ryan's, laughing right beside her. I didn't look at her at first. I just watched the timer on the screen move second by second. But when the message ended, I lifted my eyes. And I swear, I'd never seen a person lose all their color so fast. Her face went pale. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her hands trembled slightly, and she grabbed the counter like she suddenly forgot how to stand. It was the silence that struck me most. The same woman who had just spent 15 minutes spinning a perfect story, couldn't form a single word. Not one. She wasn't confused. She wasn't hurt. She was caught. Completely exposed. And in that moment, I realized something important: the truth hits harder than anger ever could. For a long moment after the voicemail stopped, the only sound in the room was the low hum of the refrigerator. Lauren's eyes stayed locked on the phone like it might somehow erase itself if she stared hard enough. Then, finally, she spoke. "It's not what you think." The classic line. Soft. Shaky. Almost rehearsed. I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear what story she would try to build from the ashes. "It was a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "The girls were joking around. You know how they are." I raised an eyebrow. "You called a man's voice a joke?" She blinked, scrambling. "That wasn't, it was probably someone else's husband nearby. We were all hanging out. It was noisy." Her words came fast now, tripping over themselves, rushing to cover every hole she could find. I reached for the folder I'd prepared earlier. Placed it on the table next to the phone. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let's take it one step at a time." She swallowed hard. I opened the first page, the hotel charge. "Did you all stay in a hotel in Clearwater?" She froze. The cabin had issues. Plumbing problems. We had to switch last minute." "Funny," I said gently, because the cabin owner confirmed no one checked in. Her breath caught. I turned the page, the restaurant receipt. "You all ate at a romantic steakhouse. The one known for two-person dinners. We got split up. They seated us separately." "Your receipt shows only 2 plates, I replied calmly. She looked away, biting her lips like the truth might spill out if she opened them again. Next were the texts from her friends. "Bad service here, LOL. The generic replies. The vague answers. Did all 3 of them suddenly forget how to send pictures? Or how to answer simple questions? She stepped back, gripping her arms tightly. "Ethan, please. I didn't want to hurt you. I just needed space." That was the moment her lies fell apart. Not because the excuses had run out, but because she finally said something honest. Not faithful. Not loyal. Just honest. She bowed her head, whispering, "I made a mistake." I shook my head. No. A mistake is spilling coffee. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was planned. It took time. It took choices. And you chose all of them. Tears filled her eyes, but I felt strangely calm. Like the storm inside me had already passed. I closed the folder, slid it toward her, and said quietly, "You need to leave." She looked up in shock. "Tonight?" "By morning," I said. "You can sleep here one last night. But tomorrow, this place is no longer yours." Her shoulders drooped, like someone had taken the ground out from under her feet. There was nothing left for her to say. Nothing she could argue. Nothing she could fix. The truth had spoken louder than any excuse she could create. Her lies had finally collapsed. Lauren packed her things early the next morning. No yelling. No dramatic goodbye. Just the quiet sound of zippers, drawers opening, and the soft thud of her shoes as she walked around the apartment one last time. When she stepped out the door, she didn't look back. And honestly, I didn't expect her to. I stood by the window and watched her car pull out of the driveway. For a moment, I felt empty, like the calm after a storm when everything is too quiet. I thought that was the end of it. The betrayal. The lies. The confrontation. But later that afternoon, as I replayed the voicemail one final time before archiving it, something caught my attention. A voice in the background, not Ryan's, not Lauren's, someone else's. A woman's voice. It wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. "Ryan, hurry up. You said you'd call me back." A name followed. And Lauren definitely wasn't the woman he was supposed to call. My eyebrows lifted as the realization hit me. Ryan wasn't single. He wasn't dating casually. He was in a long-term relationship. And his partner clearly had no idea what happened during that weekend trip. For a few minutes, I just sat there staring at the phone. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't looking for more drama. But something about leaving that truth hidden felt wrong. Not because of Lauren. Not because of Ryan. But because someone else, someone innocent, was being lied to the same way I was. So I searched. Found her social media. Her name was Emily. There were pictures of them together, holidays, birthdays, celebrations. For years' worth of memories. And she had no clue. I didn't write a message. I didn't explain anything. I didn't add context. I simply forwarded the voicemail to her from an anonymous email. No threats. No accusations. Just the truth. A few hours later, everything began to unfold on its own. Jacob texted me first. "Dude, something's happening at Lauren's office." Apparently, Emily showed up at the building around lunchtime. She confronted Ryan in the lobby, in front of coworkers, managers, everyone. No shouting, just firm, cold disappointment. The kind that sinks a person deeper than any argument. Word spread fast. And when someone whispered Lauren's name into the conversation, the puzzle pieces connected for half the office instantly. By the end of the day, both Lauren and Ryan were called into HR. Not because of me. Not because I said anything. But because their actions spread through the workplace like wildfire. People talk. And some truths can't be stopped once they start moving. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I simply stood on my balcony that evening, watching the city lights flicker below, and took a deep breath. Justice doesn't always need a fight. Sometimes the truth does the work on its own. And walking away quietly, felt like the strongest move I'd ever made. In the days that followed, my life felt strangely quiet. Not empty, just quiet in a way I hadn't noticed before. No forced conversations. No excuses. No pretending everything was fine. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I spent the first week cleaning the apartment, not because I needed to, but because it felt like wiping away the dust of something that had already ended long before that weekend trip. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in months. Went out for coffee. Played basketball with Jacob. Sat on my balcony at night without feeling the weight of someone else's secrets hanging over me. And somewhere in that slow return to normal, a small truth began forming inside me: I had ignored my instincts for too long. All the little signs, the nervous smiles, the sudden schedule changes, the distracted conversations, they were there. But I trusted her more than I trusted myself. Now, looking back, I realize something important: your instincts aren't alarms trying to scare you. They're warnings trying to protect you. I started seeing a therapist for a little while. Not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand why I stayed silent when my heart was whispering that something was off. Talking through it helped me see the truth more clearly. I didn't lose someone good. I lost someone who had already checked out of our life long before I noticed. There's a strange kind of peace in accepting that. Over time, the anger faded. The sadness faded. Even the shock faded. What stayed with me was a lesson, one I wish I had learned sooner, but maybe it came exactly when it was supposed to. People don't always reveal who they are with their words. They reveal it with the gaps between those words. With the silence. With the way their stories don't match their actions. Sometimes, the truth doesn't shout. It slips through little cracks. A changed tone. A forgotten detail. A voicemail not meant for you. And that's enough. I began rebuilding, slowly, quietly, intentionally. Focused on work again. Picked up old hobbies. Started planning trips with friends. I even began meeting new people, not rushing, just allowing life to unfold naturally again. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm grateful the truth came out before more years slipped away. And if there's one thing I want anyone listening to take away from my story, it's this: sometimes the silence between two people tells you more than their words ever will. If something feels wrong, listen. If something feels off, pay attention. Your heart knows long before your mind wants to accept it. Lauren's lies collapsed on their own. I didn't have to destroy anything. I just had to stop ignoring the truth that had been sitting quietly in front of me for months. And now, I'm finally free to move forward, calmer, stronger, and wiser than before. If this story hit home, you're not alone. For more powerful stories of truth, betrayal, and justice, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if Ethan's journey meant something to you, tap like. It helps these stories reach someone who needs it.